So the spoilers for chapter 236 of Jujutsu Kaisen have come out, and honestly it was a very crushing chapter. I can definitely say that the instant I saw a younger Gojo with Geto, I instantly understood what exactly that meant for the story, and it meant that Gojo had most likely passed away, and a lot of people are going to assume that it's actually a flashback that we're seeing, but this is actually kind of more of a end of life, kind of pre-death sort of state that Gojo's in, where, you know, he's kind of talking to Geto, I'm assuming kind of like in their version of heaven, quote unquote, or, you know, just the afterlife. So he's kind of talking to Geto in this place, and this isn't necessarily a flashback, it's actually just him, you know, being sent off, and this is his final moments. It is very crushing seeing this, just in the fact that Gojo technically did kind of die alone. You know, he was by himself with Sukuna, but he didn't really have any of his students right there next to him, and, you know, that's just very unfortunate for his character, and it's just sad seeing him kind of talk to Geto, talk about all these different people, and, you know, this is just his final moments before he actually passes away. The chapter actually starts off with Gojo, of course, talking to that kind of spirit version of Geto, and he's talking about the fact that he did realize that he is going to most likely die alone, and, you know, he's saying, you know, it's fine, it's whatever, but then Geto asks him, you know, how was the King of Curses? How was that fight going? And Gojo says that he was really strong, but he wasn't actually able to use all of his strength. So this is kind of apparent. I knew since the beginning that Sukuna's going all out in the capacity that he's using just the 10 shadows because it is the perfect counter to Gojo, but Sukuna has not used his full capabilities, his full abilities. We know that his prime version, the most powerful version of him, was most likely that four-armed version, and he's not even in that right now. He's just using Megumi's body because he has the perfect counter to Gojo, so why, you know, go through more trouble doing anything else other than using the perfect counter? Like, you know, at the end of the day, this is a villain, this is Sukuna, and a lot of people have been calling him a fraud because of the fact that he's kind of borrowing the power from Megumi, and, you know, even I've been kind of going into the joke, but at the end of the day, he's the only one that was smart enough to do all of that, and smart enough and powerful enough to utilize the full potential of the 10 shadows technique. So you have to give the dude that he's not a fraud for using that power. He's just smart for, you know, doing it the easiest way. Like, I have a goal, I want to get, you know, from point A to point B, I'm going to use the easiest route to do that, and that's exactly what he did here by using Megumi's technique. This part of the spoilers gets very sad on Gojo's part, and it's basically him speaking on the idea that, you know, he wasn't sure if he could even have beaten him if he didn't use the 10 shadows technique. So it's just him saying that, you know, he did realize that Sukuna was a very strong opponent and somebody that, you know, even somebody on the level of Gojo might not have been able to beat. I'm going to try to interpret this line that he does say next, but he talks about the idea that he did feel loved by everybody, and he did feel like everybody kind of joining together, you know, being there with him, but at the same time, he says that he kind of felt like at a certain point, he was more of a kind of living being than a person, and I feel like the best explanation for what he's saying there is that he kind of felt like his name, Gojo Satoru, wasn't really his name. It was more of like a kind of like a thing, like a legend, like he's the strongest. And I feel like this kind of plays into the thing that Geto did tell him back in the day, like, are you Gojo Satoru because you're strong, or are you the strongest because you're Gojo? And I feel like he's kind of playing on that, saying that at a certain point, like, even he himself, even with everybody saying, like, you know, we understand you, know, we actually love you for who you are, he still kind of felt like he was more of a kind of living being, like a living being as the strongest, rather than, you know, being himself Gojo. And that's honestly very sad. So it means, like, even in his last moments, he still, even though everybody's with him, he realizes that he has people that really care for him, he still felt like he was kind of more of a tool than an actual person. He then kind of goes on with an analogy about a flower, kind of saying, you know, if there's a beautiful flower kind of blossoming, you know, people are going to admire it, but not a lot of people are going to be like, hey, I kind of want you to, you know, I want to understand this thing, and they're not really going to ask that or understand, you know, the flower. Gojo then states that, you know, the techniques that I've honed with this body, the things that I've mastered, you know, the spur of the moment ideas that I've had, you know, the explosiveness in my abilities, the power, all of that, and he wanted to throw all of that at Sukuna, and we kind of get him saying that, you know, he wanted Sukuna to kind of, you know, take all of that and, you know, dish it back, you know, show Gojo what he could also do. And we kind of see a panel where it's going over what Sukuna said, you know, the absolute strongest, the loneliness that comes with it, the one that will teach you love is, and Gojo, all he can kind of say to that is, you know, it was fun, you know, he did throw everything at him, he tried his best, and he did have fun fighting against somebody that could kind of understand, you know, being the strongest, or being at the apex, being very strong. And I feel like that's kind of like where he's going with this, like, maybe Sukuna does to an extent understand what Gojo was going through in being the strongest. Gojo was touted as the strongest, kind of seen as a living being, not even a real person. People see Sukuna as the strongest sorcerer, you know, they see him as a monster, a calamity, and it's kind of very similar with Gojo. Gojo was kind of seen as just the strongest. and I feel like he kind of understands that maybe someone like Sukuna could understand where he was coming from. And the next set of like sentences that they do is just very heartbreaking. You know, it's Gojo talking to Geto, and you know, Gojo saying, you know, it was kind of fun, I didn't get to throw everything at him, and I am sorry to Sukuna for, you know, him not being able to go all out against me. But Geto saying, you know, I'm kind of jealous that you even got to fight Sukuna, so you got to fight somebody as strong as that. So he's, you know, kind of just joking around, and Gojo then says the word satisfaction again, and he says that if you were among the people that patted me on the back before I went to fight Sukuna, I actually would have been satisfied. And it's just very sad, you know, Geto wasn't able to be there for him, and he would have really appreciated Geto actually being there to pat him on the back the same way all his students did. But he does appreciate the fact that his students were there, it's just that he really wanted Geto to also be present there, his best friend and the one person at the time that really understood him. The chapter actually then cuts to a lot of the other members that have passed away from Gojo's life, and one of them is Nanami. And you know, Gojo asks Nanami like, hey, you know, how did your life kind of end? And he says that it really wasn't that bad, you know, I did have Haibara. And it's just so sad, like, it's just the way that Gege is writing this whole scene. It's just so sad seeing everybody kind of sitting there passed away, and you know, realizing that they did kind of pass on their ideals to the next generation of Jutsu sorcerers. But it's just sad seeing them all sit there, since we're reminded that all of them did pass away at some point for kind of, you know, what they wished for, and they did fight for their ideals, and this is kind of where it led them. But at the same time, they are pushing forwards towards the future. Gojo essentially talks to every member that is there, and we see all of the different people present in his life. We even see Principal Yaga there, so we just see all the people that he knew and that appreciated him, and he appreciated himself. We see all of them there, and he does give a send-off to them, and I'm assuming that this is what he said at the end, but he says that he's really hoping that his dream kind of wasn't like a pipe dream, so he's just hoping that everything he kind of stood for, everything he fought for, did have a reason behind it. And I really do think it does. I do think that everything he fought for, everything that everybody present there kind of wanted to happen for the future, will eventually happen, and maybe someday in the Jutsu world things will be better for all of these sorcerers. Of course, this is where we get that big reveal at the chapter, you know, what everybody's talking about, everybody's going crazy over. It is the fact that Gojo has been, you know, dealt the final blow. He is deceased now, and we get that in a big double-page spread. And you know, this isn't My Hero Academia. This isn't some series like that. You know, Jujutsu Kaisen is a shonen series, but like, they don't play around. I feel like a lot of times, like when they show off somebody like explicitly gone like this, and I feel like it's kind of different with Nobara. Like, I feel like Gege purposely made it like not known whether or not she has been passed away or not, but Gojo is definitely deceased. Like, there is no, you know, maybe Gojo's gonna come back, maybe he has this. Like, Gojo's gone. We see his eyes glazed over. He's done for. This is the end of his life. Sukuna then of course talks about the fact that, you know, Mahoraga has to adapt to certain attacks, and once he adapts to it or gets hit by it more, he adapts, you know, farther and faster. And the translations for this are kind of weird, exactly what he says about that, so I'm gonna kind of wait for the chapter to actually come out to really speak on exactly what he said in that situation. But he's basically just explaining the fact that Mahoraga did adapt. We do also see Yuji and Yuta, and they're mad right now. They do not look good. They do not like the fact that their sensei has been, you know, slept by Sukuna, so they're mad, and most likely we're going to get to see them kind of go out into the field, which I have been waiting for. I'm just such a Yuta stan. Like, I want to see him do something very big in the series, so, you know, maybe we're gonna finally get that, or maybe Yuji, whoever, you know, whoever one of them comes out first. I'm not gonna be mad about whether, you know, who it is, so I'm kind of just waiting for that to happen. The final couple panels of the chapter do include Sukuna giving Gojo a kind of standing ovation. He says that, you know, he's never going to forget him throughout his entire life, and he didn't say this, you know, disrespectfully. He genuinely gave him the same respect in the way when he was fighting Jogo. He said that, I'm going to remember you, I respect you, you were a strong fighter, and you know, you pushed me to a certain point that I've never really been pushed before by, maybe by somebody else. But Gojo has been given, you know, that kind of pass from Sukuna, saying that you are strong. And of course, before anything can happen, before anything can kind of, you know, have the dust settle, any of that, Kashimo comes out of nowhere, the smoke demon himself. He jumps out and he says, you know, now we gotta fight. So Kashimo, he did say it. He said, like, if Gojo goes down, I'm going to jump right in. And he wasn't playing. Honestly, he had to have like already been kind of booking it, like even before Gojo passed away, because he's already there, and they were pretty far away from where the other students were. So he's gonna have his way with Sukuna, have his fight, and we're gonna finally get to see what his curse technique is and why he feels so confident that he can actually beat Sukuna. With that being said, though, that is the end of the leaks for this week, and honestly, this is one of the biggest chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen ever. Like, this is crazy, just how much, you know, discussion has been going on with this, how much has been going on, and it's just the fact that Gojo has lost, and the fan favorite, the one person that everybody assumed just couldn't go down, has lost. And Sukuna literally said it himself, like, and Gojo said it himself, like, Sukuna didn't really have to try as hard as, you know, he really could have. He could have went way harder on Gojo, but he kind of just made it easy, maybe even conserving energy on purpose by using the 10 shadows. Like I said, he has so many different options. He hasn't even shown us his true technique, and he kind of just used the 10 shadows because why not? Like, I have the easiest way to defeat you. Why wouldn't I use this? So it makes a lot of sense, but it is just unfortunate that Gojo did pass away. Like I'm not like the biggest Gojo stan, but it's just sad kind of seeing how he went out and seeing him with all the other people that did have to pass away in the story just for things to progress. So it's very sad, but it is what it is. With that being said though, definitely let me know what you just thought of these spoilers in the comment section down below. Also, like the video if you liked it and subscribe, as it really does help me out, and I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by and watching the video. Thank you for watching, and I'm out. Peace.